My name is Arin Lindauer, and you're listening to A Life Without Struggle. I'm a wife, a mother of 2 wonderful children, a 2-time best-selling author, and a highly driven and successful entrepreneur. In my 17-plus year career as a mindset and health expert, I know what holds women back from a life you only dream about. Whether you're a CEO, a businesswoman, or executive, I started this podcast because I have been where you are, and I know you want and deserve more out of your life. I believe women are limitless. We just get lost along the way. The process to get you there is the topic and purpose of this podcast. When you understand what you want, you can truly step into a life without struggle. Welcome, and I'm so thankful you're here. Welcome back to another episode of Life Without Struggle. My name is Arin Lindauer, and today we're going to dig into lessons from 17 years of business. I know I don't look that old, but yes, we just turned 17 years old today. And so today, meaning the day that I'm recording this. So, oh man, I got so much to say on this one. So this one's a good one. I'm going to parallel a lot of lessons, a lot of trials and tribulations, a lot of things that we have experienced in running a business for the last 17 years, or for 17 years. And I want to take you back all the way to the beginning. So all the way to the beginning. And here's the deal. I did not grow up wanting to own a business. Matter of fact, my parents told me not to run a business. My parents told me to get a nice comfy job. They told me to get a 401k and all the pension and benefits that my heart desired, which I didn't even know what that meant. So I remember going to school and I was going to be a nurse. Like that's what I really wanted. I wanted to help people. I wanted job security according to my father, which was good advice. But I remember going to school and absolutely falling in love when I started teaching a splash and dash water aerobics class, right? Okay, yeah. So super funny story is I was lifeguarding one day at this health club, and I had always lifeguarded. I saw it this way, like I got to get a really good tan, and it was the only summer job that you could make as much money as you could, basically just sitting there getting a tan. And obviously we saved a few lives here and there, but so I hope you guys are laughing. But what I remember is I was sitting in the guard stand and my boss came over to me and she said, "Hey, the instructor for the class tonight just quit and I'm going to need you to teach this class." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, "I don't even know anything about it." And she was like, "Well, just do these things, this, that, and the other." And I mean, she literally just threw me right into it. So that was my baptism by fire, but I fell in love. I fell in love with working with, it was predominantly women, but I had a couple men in the class, and I just fell in love with helping people from a whole different angle. And it made so much sense because I remember doing rounds in the hospital and I was very attached to a couple patients. And I remember the woman that was in charge, she just said, "Hey, you got to keep moving. We have more beds to see." And it wasn't patients, it was beds. And it really took the human out of it. And I realized just in her personal viewpoint that it was just another day, another job. And I also realized very, very quickly that most of the reasons that people were laying in those beds could have been prevented had they taken care of themselves just a little bit differently. So fast forward, I'm working at this health club and I see this cute blonde. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, who's that guy?" Well, lo and behold, he ended up moving into an apartment building next to my apartment. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on?" And I remember meeting Tony. So Tony is, for anyone new listening to this, is my husband. And yes, we met at the gym that we both worked at. But I remember just, dating, falling in love. And at that particular point in time of my life, I had been training clients outside of the back of my car, and I would drive all over the city And I would go in and I would train people in their homes, at their work, at their apartment complex, gym. Like, it was just kind of funny. But I remember Tony saying, hey, tell me a little bit more about what you're doing. What do you think? And so we started to really craft a business plan, and we felt very compelled to leave the gym that we were at. It was a medically based facility that really promised you everything, but never fulfilled on any of it. And I mean, we were working our tails off for someone else and, kind of sort of making the money, but it just wasn't fulfilling. It was a lot of long hours and just, I don't know, it just wasn't what we both thought it was going to be. And so lo and behold, sitting in an apartment that was way too small with way too many people and way too many animals, we created our LLC. And I remember just sitting there Googling how to create an LLC. And we figured it out. And so lo and behold, 17 years ago to this day, we created what was Transformation Fitness and Wellness LLC that later transformed into TF Wellness Inc. And so the rest is history, as they say. And so I wanted to share with you some of the lessons and things that came along the way. I'll never forget the way we started our business was absolutely maintaining our day jobs. It was probably one of the toughest spaces, the hardest I had ever worked in my life, but it was absolutely what I felt was the correct way to start our business and to really see, can this work? Now, mind you, this is circa 2007, right? And so a lot of things happened in 2007. And we really questioned, could we get this thing off the ground? Would it work? And so we rented a very humble beginnings, 900 square feet. We got some refurbished equipment from a school that was getting rid of their equipment. And we just kind of went from there. We grew very, very quickly. After 6 months, we absolutely needed more space. We ended up purchasing the building that was just 2 doors down. That's a whole story in itself, but I'll save that for another day. And I mean, we cranked out of that space. That space was an amazing space. We had like 140 some clients. We had, I want to say it was 5 or 6 corporate clients at the end of it. And we ran out of space in that place. And so we ultimately ended up purchasing another building just a mile down the road that was everything we had dreamed of and then some. And one thing that I want to insert in this part of the story is we had an image of a guy's gym that Tony had seen, and he was like, this is what I want, down to how many toilet stalls, how many offices, different extra spaces, down to our office, down to the workout area. I mean, we had it mapped out. We had created a vision. It took us about 2 years to actually acquire and purchase that building, but it looked identical to the picture that Tony had pulled off the internet, printed, and then our description of everything. And then you should have seen when the architect drew up what we were thinking. It was exactly what we had drawn 2 years prior. And so I've talked multiple times on this podcast about knowing what you want, writing it down, casting the vision, putting it out there. And I'll also add this asterisk, be careful what you ask for, because it just may come true. But I digress on that. But it was really, really cool to see just this absolute vision. And I mean, we ran that business, and it was an amazing business until it wasn't. And that's where I want to help weave in a story that I think is going to be very applicable to not only a business journey, but also a journey with weight loss. And so what was interesting is in that time frame of purchasing that that new building, we started to have a family. And before, it was always Tony and I, and, we would work from sun up to sundown, and then we started having kids, and all of a sudden life had to change, and it had to change pretty drastically. And some of us are resistant to change, myself included. And so it became a struggle when it really didn't have to be. And so I'm curious if you can pinpoint different times in your life where you look back and you're like, man, that was actually a really good time in your life, but why did you fight it? Why did you resist it? And so there's a lot of factors that can go into why we feel resistance, why we, experience the different struggles and things that are going on. But I know what was happening is we were changing, and I was very resistant to change, to the new us, the new life, the additional mouths to feed. And I think for a lot of women, we can't wait to be a mother, and we have our babes, and, life just continues to move forward. But for some of us, it can be a very, very big change and a very big shock if we're willing to actually dig into it and understand. This is where I see a lot of women really lose themselves from a health perspective as well. And so what happened is we started changing. What we wanted started changing. The life that we had created was not necessarily exactly what we had envisioned, but this is where we fell off course with having the vision. We had achieved everything that we had wanted. And here's what happens is you become complacent. This is where we see a lot of moms and dads, a lot of business leaders get very complacent with their health, with their well-being, and it happens at different points of our life, different levels of success, different things are important. And so it's something to really identify. This is something that, had I put my finger on it all the way back then, we probably could have mitigated a lot of stress, but it's also part of the journey. It's part of the lessons and the learnings that we have to extract in order to become who we are today. So I never, question, why did this happen to me? It's more, hey, this happened for me, and what can I learn from it, and how can I continue to move forward in the direction that I desire? See, what happened in that particular time and space is we didn't have any more goals. We had achieved literally everything that we had set out to achieve. And I'm curious, have you achieved everything that you've set out to achieve? Have you set new goals? What else are you working towards? What kind of quality and standards do you have for your life? Have you looked at your future self, and can you see her? Can you visualize her? See, I couldn't in that time and space, and it became a very dark space. It became a very depressed space. And so what ended up happening is about 3 years ago, we noticed a change in a couple that we admired. We knew them from a distance. We had been in different masterminds with them. And I was like, man, what is going on with this person? They used to post this way on social media, and now they're so full of possibility. Their posts are totally different. Something has changed. What changed? And so I messaged him, and I was like, hey man, what's going on? Noticed your posts are just a slightly different than what they used to be, and you're making these big changes and shifts and pivots. And he was like, hey, I don't even know how to tell you about this, but you've got to get this coach that I have. He does NLP stuff, mental programming, and man, I don't even know what he did, but I'm totally different. And I mean, that's literally the conversation that we had. And I was like, okay, that's it. That's all you got for me. But he was like, hey, you really need to look into these guys if you really want to make some massive change in your life. And so insert going through a program with Upgrade and William Lamb, and it completely changed who Tony and I are. I am forever grateful for reaching out to the gentleman and just saying, hey, what are you doing? Because I noticed the shift in him and his wife. I noticed how life just started to come together for them. And I was like, hey, what's going on? And you also have to remember too, this is, towards the not tail end of the pandemic, but I guess right in the middle. And I mean, that was just a questionable time. It was just a time where there was a ton of uncertainty. And I was like, man, everything I thought I was doing is not working. And so insert this training, and Tony and I completely changed who we are. We started really rewriting stories that we had adopted, that this is who we are. This is just the way. I mean, I would self-proclaim that I was anxious, depressed, et cetera, et cetera. And man, all it did was just completely shift all my mindset. I really started to understand what I wanted in life, where I wanted to go. But then here's what happened. So we come back from one of our very first trainings, and all of a sudden our lens of the world had changed. And this is where I want to share some very, very interesting things that happened to us. All of a sudden, I'm driving down the streets that I normally drive on. I'm walking down the roads and streets that I normally walk on. I'm interacting and mingling with the people that I was used to interacting and mingling with. And all of a sudden, there was resistance. Oh my gosh, these streets are terrible. Can you believe how much trash is in the road? Can you believe all the homeless people? Like, do you see all this crime around us? All of a sudden, my lens of the world changed. I had envisioned something else, and it was no longer in front of me. I had envisioned certain conversations and, having higher level conversations and talking about more possibility in life, not just making it. And all of a sudden, my lens changed, but my environment didn't. And so this really led to some strong resistance. And I want to parallel this with weight loss. With weight loss, it's, man, I need to make a change. I sign up for this program, I hire a coach, and all of a sudden, it's really freaking hard to lose weight. Why? Oh my gosh, everything's a struggle bus. I can't see results. And what happens is you've seen a taste of what you want. You've visualized, you've done the exercises, you see your body, your health, your relationships, everything in a different light, but it's not there yet. This is where resistance comes in like a mother. And all of a sudden, nothing's going right. It's like, what in the world? I desire this outcome. Why is it not just happening? And here's the crux. It takes time. Sometimes it takes a little more time, but doesn't have to take too much time. But here's what happens. We fight it. So this is us, year 16. We made some super big decisions. We knew in our hearts that it was time to move on from our gym. We went down every path trying to find someone to purchase, someone to take over the reins, because that would take care of our clients. It would give us the best financial outcome, and we would sell the building and the business all as a package. And it was going to be great. Until it wasn't great. We had multiple deals fall through. We had multiple things on the line. And every time you thought you were making progress, you just got crushed. And it was a brutal part of our journey. It taught me that, hey, you have to be clear on exactly what it is that you want. Every time you're faltering, every time you're questioning yourself, the universe responds, and it doesn't respond in your favor. This is extremely important in weight loss. When you make that decision to go, you go all in, you go all the way, and you see your results and you get it done. This is the best way that I can tell you, and I can tell you from experience, because this last year was probably one of the more challenging years, because you knew what you wanted, but you weren't all in. You weren't all in on the actions. You still had to show up. You still had to take care of things, and yet you weren't producing the desired outcome. But I will tell you, by being tenacious and sticking in it, it will always come full circle. This is why I tell clients it's going to take as much time to lose weight as it's going to take. Weight loss can happen quick if you allow it. But what happens is we're going up against our values. We go up against everything that we know to be true. We desire a different outcome, but we become unwilling to do the actions. It was happening to me in a totally different goal, but it's no different than weight loss. And so when we go all in on ourselves, when we finally step into the person that we desire to be, That's the sweet sauce. That's when everything comes full circle. And that's what I'm excited about going into this 17th year is we are so uber clear. We've made every decision that we needed to make in order to move powerfully forward. And I want to empower you that it's no different in weight loss. All you have to do is make the decision and go head first after what it is that you want. So my question to you is, why are you resisting weight loss? Why is it hard? What's making it hard? And if you're willing to dig into these questions and truly decipher and extract the lessons and the learnings, you'll never look back. All right, go get them.